Hello everybody, welcome back to the Ietsie Klein channel. I'm Kote, and yeah, let's get right into it. Last week feels like it was the week of finishing stuff, and this week feels like it's the week of either starting stuff or pulling stuff out. So I was accepted to test Mariana from Sweet Crochet Dreams newest design, which I'm quite excited for. So I'm working it up in two 400 meters per 100 grams yarn. So this one is from Black Cat. It was the one that was in our advent set. It's called Dark Side. And then this one is from Dreamspell Dye Works. It is the Calliope color. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. There's an E at the end of that word, but I think it's silent. And the way that the design works up is with these beautiful flowers. So this is going to continue to grow and then become like a cowl shape, and it's really smart. It is just a granny stitch. There's nothing complicated to this, but using color changes and shaping, she creates this gorgeous pattern on a really stunning looking cowl. So I'm really excited to work more on this. The other project that I started is the Jethro cardigan. So that is the Yarn Rooms make along for this year. And I'm quite excited for that one because it combines crochet and knitting together in the same garment. So this one I've actually put money aside from last year to buy the yarn for, and I'm so glad I didn't end up spending the money. So yay me for budgeting. So I'm working it up in Spindles and Spokes Nonyana base. It is a DK base with quite a few fibers mixed in. There's a bit of viscose and a bit of linen together with merino. So Anita actually hand dyes the singles and then she plies it together so that it creates this really gorgeous two-tone type of effect. So it's really stunning, and then when it works up it becomes really beautiful, and there's lots of depth in the color and how things shifts, and then together with the light flecks of the different yarn fibers that's in this yarn, it is absolutely stunning. And I think that this is going to be probably one of my favorite makes for the year, if I'm quite frank with you. So yeah, yesterday I was also at the yarn room for our journaling workshop. So it was really fun hanging out with everyone and planning for the future, and like talking about what types of projects we want to make, and talking about what approaches each one of us have to journaling. What is the stuff that we think is important to write down? What is the stuff that we think is less important? And it was really fascinating to see how everyone is different, because some people think that having a WIP list is not that important because they would rather want to be able to like write notes and track their WIPs as full pages than having a list, for example. And it's really fascinating to learn that the different approaches to things. So I always knew that it was that way, like everybody is unique obviously, but it's really interesting to actually see it in person and really fundamentally understand that I think we were about 7 or 8 ladies at the workshop, and each one of us had such a vastly different journal, and each one of us had little tips and tricks and things that we do to share with each other, and it was really so uplifting and soul filling. It was really fantastic, and yeah, I very much enjoyed it. It is really good. If you ever have the opportunity to attend one of Jua's journaling classes, then absolutely, please do. She is a wealth of information, and there's so much that she shares, and she shares so openly. So she brought her whole stationery stash with her, and she actually allowed us to like rifle through and take bits and parts that we want to incorporate into our own journals to like carry this piece of Jua forward into our journals. And it was so incredibly special, because I know myself, like I would have the heebie-jeebies if someone just rifles through my stationery and be like, oh, I like this sticker. I'll be like, but I like that sticker. So I really admire Jua's generosity, that she's able to just fully share like this. And I think it's very much a spirit that I would like to embody as well. So yeah, on that note though, let's have a quick look at my journal updates. So I'm just going to hold it up and not shift the perspective this time, so it feels a little bit more organic as it flows. So first up, on my 25 and 25, I reached 2 blockies. One is unexpected and one was low-key expected. So this one was buying sweater quantity yarn, which I've done for the Jethro cardigan. And then this one was to create project pages for 3 projects. And considering that I have 2 projects that I'm starting up and 1 project that I'm currently busy with, the Clint Shawl. I need to bring that in so that I can show you guys. I'll do so at the end of the video. Okay. So yeah, I made project pages for those 3. And considering that for all of last year, I made something like 3 or 4 project pages, I thought, 3 is low-key ambitious. It's not, it's okay. So yeah, smash that. I totally blame that it was so much fun to do journaling with Jua that I just kept going. So it's Jua, it's your fault. And then taking a look at my chapter 1 page quickly, you can see my WIP list grew quite a bit. So what I added to it this week is I worked on the Clint Shawl as well as a few rows on the lathe cardigan. I think maybe like 10 or so rows on that one. And then the Jethro cardigan as well as the Bliss cowl, which is Jua's new pattern. And then I bought the 800 grams of the spindles and spokes. It's this lovely Nonyona. The other one that I bought as well, so it's 6 of that one. That is the lilac roller colorway, and then 2 of the lavender, which is a bit more of a solidy kind of look one. And then I used quite a fair bit of yarn because I had to roll up the 2 for the Bliss and then starting the Jethro. So that's fun. And then I just wrote my weekly experience and thoughts that I had about this week and so on. Let's quickly just show you guys my project pages. So here is for Jethro and then Clint. So for Jethro, I stuck in the little card that comes with the spindles and spokes skein that I worked into the edge with a bit of yarn. And then on the other side, there's Bliss, and then the 2 yarns that I used there. Isn't that cute? I really like this idea that I had. I think it's going to be lovely. What does happen though is because it's something that's on the other side of the page, when you've stuck something here, for example, and you now want to write here, there is a bit of a groove underneath. So if you have thinner pages than what I do, I think it might maybe be problematic to do this. So it might be an idea to rather stick them in proper after a few pages, that there's a bit of padding. I really like this book from Bubblegum Fringe though, because the pages are really thick. So even though it's just 1 page in between, it's enough that my pen doesn't want to keep poking through the page. And yeah, that's it for my journal. Now, the meaty part. What I want to do in this video is talk about frogging as well as frog a project. So I have the Kote with me. I posted it about my Instagram a few days ago. I think it was on Friday, where I took some pretty photos of this back piece as well as the shoulder saddles and the front honeycomb, just to like do a final commemoration of this piece, because I think that I'm ready to frog it now. A reason why I want to frog it is this. So the way that the fabric folds next to this cable is really, I can't get over it, and it's not something that can be blocked out. It's something that will live with this piece for forever. and I would rather use this yarn in a different project that I would love to wear and that doesn't annoy me so much. So this loop is from Knotty Habit. It's their knitting loops. So I'm just going to pull this out, and while I do this, talk to you about how to frog, because frogging is not just a matter of ripping it out. You need to have a little bit of a plan for it, because there is a lot of yarn that's going to come out of this. So either you can take the approach of rolling it back onto the ball, whatever ball you were using. As I'm pulling this out, I'm noticing there's some stitch markers in here that I must just not let drop. Okay. So you can't just pull it and let it end up in a heap and then tell yourself, oh, I'm going to deal with the knots after. That's not a smart strategy. Got to be a little bit smarter. But over and beyond that, something else that you need to consider is the tension in the yarn as you're frogging. Because if you are just rolling it up into a ball and you leave it in that ball, there's going to be different tension sections in that ball. Because when you're pulling stuff out, there's sections where the fibers have sort of started making friends with each other in the stitches, especially something like this that have been sitting for 2 years or so, that it has made good friends with each other. So when you yank those stitches out, there's going to be tension difference on that piece of yarn that goes into the ball, because there is more tension that you're putting on it as it rolls over. So that piece is then going to be stretched as it is rolled up in this ball. So the end result is that you're going to have pieces of your yarn that's a bit stretched out and pieces that's not stretched out because it was a little bit more relaxed when you put it in. So I would highly recommend that after you've frogged it, re-roll that ball. Don't then put that ball as is into your stash. If you have access to a niddy noddy, I would actually recommend to roll it into a big skein again. Part of the reason why I recommend that is when you pull out yarn, you'll see it now when I start pulling out this yarn. Just taking out these holders that was in place for the pockets that was supposed to be worked in. So as you're pulling out the yarn, it's yarn noodles, right? So as each stitch was sitting in its little loop, it has now gotten comfortable sitting in that loop. So then when you use this yarn again in the future, it wants to sit where that loop was, right? But obviously your stitches is not going to fall at the exact same place than what your previous stitches fell. So if those loops then sit slightly offset to where they want to sit, and you have a little bit of a looser tension, the end result is going to be that your work looks a little bit messy in comparison to pieces worked with normal yarn that wasn't yarn noodles. So sometimes that can affect your tension as well, especially if you don't have very tight tension. With those loops, they pull in a little bit and then they make your work a bit funny, and then it doesn't look quite as neat as what worked with normal yarn is. The good news though is that you can return yarn noodles to normal yarn. I'm going to pull out a little bit here so that you can see what yarn noodles look like. It really looks like noodles. So when your stitches want to form, they want to sit on those loops, and if they can't, then it affects your tension. So the best thing to do is to use a niddy noddy and just skein it back up so that you can actually wash that yarn. Put it into a basin, make it wet and let it dry, and then it will relax all of those yarn noodles quite nicely, and it will be almost back to normal. So this is what a niddy noddy looks like. This one is from Ashford, but you can totally make one yourself as well. You can make use of those white PVC piping that they use for plumbing, and then just like get those connectors And then all you need is, it needs to be offset. So you need to have a crossbar and then a horizontal match, and then this one needs to be at a 90-degree shift so that you can niddy-noddy around it. So I'm going to start this one now and talk you guys through how to niddy-noddy. The beginning of this part is going to be the end of the skein and not actually frogging my project yet, just so it can get on here and I don't have to do a cut unnecessarily. So usually what I do is I just twist it around the middle part to secure the end so it doesn't end up flipping over. And then as you're holding it like this, you go up over the one arm, down over this arm, up across the other arm, and then down across the other arm. So you can see that it creates like a continuous loop here. Very important is to pay attention to this path, because if you were to cross your yarn over, so instead of following the path like what I'm doing here, if you were to go this way around, what you're creating is a deviation in the loop. And then when you want to put this yarn back onto a winder and a swift and actually make it into a ball, you're going to have a hard time, because then the yarn is not going to be in one continuous loop. It's going to have some twists and turns in it, which means that it's then going to be a bit difficult and it's going to create tangles. This yarn is wanting to be friends here. What is happening here? I'll work it out. The reason why this is called a niddy-noddy is, I don't know whether you saw while I was doing a few loops here, there's an easy way to be able to do the loops. I'm just going to pull off one loop here so that I can deal with that knot just now. So when you're doing it, you can hold this hand quite steady, and then you niddy-noddy with your wrist, the niddy-noddy around, so that you end up following this path. It does take a little bit of practice and it becomes muscle memory after a very short while. So just practice it and see how it goes. But yeah, I'm going to unknot this, niddy-noddy it up, and then I'll be back when I reach my live stitches. Cool. Okay, we have now reached live stitches. Okay, so you'll see the noodles start to come out now. So part of why I like using a niddy-noddy is that it creates a consistent pace that the yarn comes out of, because if you're rolling it onto a ball, as the ball gets bigger, the pace goes faster. Whereas with the niddy-noddy, it's a consistent pace the whole time. So you can start seeing how your piece reacts to being frogged and then react to that. So as I'm pulling this out, oh, this one's going quite easily despite being such an old project. You can see that the amount of yarn that I'm pulling out is a consistent amount the whole time, which means that the tension as it's going onto the noddy is similar. And also, if you were to encounter any sort of difficulty with fibers getting caught in your work or something like that, you'll have a feel for how often it starts happening, and it's usually at a similar interval, and then you can more easily stop and start. So yeah, I'm going to continue with this for a little bit until I get to the end of this particular skein, and then I'll chat to you what we do now after that's done. There we go. We reached the end of the skein. So here's a full skein on the niddy-noddy. Here's the end. So now what you need to do is fandangle this end that you twisted around the beginning part, and then you'll see your ends won't typically be in a economical space. So this one is on this bar and this one is on this bar, so they don't quite meet up, which means that I need to go back a little bit. I like to go back with both of them because you're going to have a piece that's going to be extra, and that is the sacrifice. So what you then do is that you take your two ends, you cross them over each other like that, so that they can twist around each other. So there's the open end. See, they twisted. And then you, oh, this is hard to show while holding it up. Then you make a little bit of a gappy in between your threads on that space, and the end that's coming this way, you pull through from that direction to the other side, and the end on the other side, you pull the other direction through. Okay, so that it essentially makes a figure 8 around your yarn. And then you just tie it off on the other side with a simple knot. I don't like making this knot too tight, because then when you actually wash this yarn, the water will have a bit of difficulty getting into the fibers where that knot is. So having a little bit of space like that is just fine. Then you cut off your ends. They won't be completely useless. We will use them. So now you have a skein. What I have found is when you do wash your skeins, they like to get tangled. So having just this one knot is going to help, but you need more if you move it around too much. And that will just make the process when it dries, so that you can get it back onto the swift safely a little bit easier. So where your knot is now here, what I like to do is tie another tie on the opposite one. So if you look at it like a square, the exact opposite one here. And then if you have another piece, you can tie a third tie. It's just more safe, but you don't have to. So with this one, you don't have a cross yet. So you just lay your yarn over like that. And then you make an opening somewhere in between the threads like that. And as your yarn is lying over, the one going to the one direction, you pull through, and then the other one, the other direction, you pull through, and then you tie it off. Just a normal overhand knot is perfectly fine as long as it's secure. And then you effectively have a figure 8 around your threads here. So now I'm just going to pop this off on which one of the little armies. You can pop it off, and then you'll see that it basically just folds open and the other side comes out. I knocked you guys off. Sorry. So here we have our full skein. So you can see how very noodly it is. So you can see here's the threads that was coming out of the normal skein, and then here's the threads that was in my knitting. So I'm going to quickly give this a wash, and then I'll be back to show you guys how much of a difference it makes. Alrighty, so one quick rinse and a wash and a squeeze got you going from noodle soup to very nice straight yarn. So now this skein is still wet, this skein I still need to wash, but just look at that comparison. It's amazing, isn't it? So important to note as well, this similar effect affects you if you are working from sock blanks. So sock blanks is a dye technique where they take an already knitted piece of fabric and then they dye that piece of fabric. The end result is that you get a yarn that has very interesting variegation, and nowhere is the same throughout the entire thread of the yarn. However, same as when you're frogging your existing knitting and re-knitting with that yarn, those kinks coming out of the sock blank is going to affect your tension when you actually knit with it. So I highly recommend to never knit straight off a sock blank like I see some people do. My hands are full of fluffy, sorry. I don't recommend to knit straight off a sock blank because those loops and variations do affect your tension. I think I actually have a sock blank that I can show you guys somewhere here. Here we go. This is a sock blank. This one is from Esteriza, and as you can tell, you're dyeing a piece of fabric, so your dye technique is a lot different. But because this is already knitted and it's a piece of fabric, you need to frog this, wash it, and then use it. But isn't this pretty? Look at this lovely sock blank. I love it. So interesting. I still have to knit with a sock blank. I've never knit with a sock blank before. So yeah, I'm quite excited to see how it knit up. There is a sock blank that I have that I frogged already that's somewhere in here. But yeah, still need to work with it. But cool. Okay, then before I close off the video, as promised, my Clint Shawl. So here she is. So I finished off the entire block panel and she is gorgeous. I'm loving the way that the variegated yarns are creating patterns by themselves in these little quilt block motifs. So now I'm done with the center block, I'm done with the top band as well as the bottom curve band. I now need to knit the wings out, both on the left and the right hand side. So yeah, I'm very excited to work more on this one. But I have so many nice new projects now. They're going to be clamoring for attention. But yeah, cool. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate it. And let me know, have you recently frogged a project? Did you experience maybe a tension shift? Would you want to wash your yarn going forward? I'm quite interested to learn what other people think about this topic. But yeah, thank you for listening. Bye.